So I've been obsessed with leadership like my entire life. Growing up, my dad was a teacher and a coach, and so some of the most formative moments in my life as a kid was watching my dad coach wrestling and football or teach it in the classroom. And whether it was in the classroom or on the football field or on the wrestling mat, something amazing always happened whenever my dad led other people. Whenever my dad was teaching or coaching, people would suddenly lean in. Or they would have these light bulb moments where they were all of a sudden excited about learning, or they would just become the best versions of themselves. And so ever since I was a little kid, whenever I saw that happen around me, I always used to think in the deepest part of who I am, oh, if you can use words to make people feel that way, that must be why I exist. So I've been obsessed with leadership most of my life. I've tried to get the conversations with the best leaders around me to talk about leadership. I've devoured as many leadership articles and books as humanly possible. And what I've tried to do in Leadership Lab is take the best of the best of all the leadership methods and ideas out there and distill them into a 12-week classroom setting where a handful of people get together, and what we do is we talk about leadership, I lecture about leadership, we argue about leadership, and we do leadership stuff together so that we can become the most compelling and joyful leaders that we can be. So specifically in Leadership Lab, we've broken down leadership into 3 unique components: calling, community, and culture. Calling, because leaders have an indomitable confidence in what God has uniquely called them to accomplish in the world. And that indomitable confidence, what it does is it helps them weather the storms of challenge and criticism when those things come. So calling's a big piece of what we talk about, but also community, because good leaders, they're not good leaders just because they have great isolated skills and abilities. That's a part of it, but good leaders are great leaders because they get the best of everybody around them. And so we talk about how to do that as leaders together. And lastly, we talk about culture, because whenever a leader walks into a culture, a classroom, a setting, or an environment, what a leader does is makes the culture more attractive and more joyful to everybody in the room. They are high tides that rise all ships around them. So my hope is that after 12 weeks of thinking, talking, studying, arguing, practicing leadership together, my hope is that you walk away from those 12 weeks with an indomitable clarity of who you are, what you've been called to lead in the world, and how to do that in the best way imaginable. That type of clarity only comes from an environment where you're hanging out, rubbing off, and arguing and enjoying the company of other people who are pursuing leadership together. You want that, you want that clarity, because throughout my years of leadership and pastoring and planting, what has stayed with me and stuck with me is that confidence that's come from my calling, that feeling of watching in the classroom and on the football field, people come to life underneath my father's leadership, and thinking in the deepest part of who I am, if you can use words to make people feel that way, that must be why I exist. I hope that Leadership Lab gives you your "that must be why I exist" moment. Boom!